Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me welcome you to the City of Tempe Board of Adjustments for Wednesday, June, sorry, looking at the wrong date there. This is July 27, 2022. Good thing I was paying attention there. The City of Tempe Board of Adjustment is authorized by the Arizona Revised Statutes and the City of Tempe Zoning Ordinance. Its function is to grant relief where a literal enforcement of the zoning ordinance would result in an unnecessary property hardship, to interpret provisions of the zoning ordinance or variances, and to hear appeals from any person or city official aggrieved by the decision of a person responsible for the enforcement of the zoning ordinance. The board has the City of Tempe Community Development staff summary reports on the items being considered at this meeting and will use this in their deliberations. So there will be a point during our meeting where if any member, either joining us virtually or in person, wishes to make comment on the case, we can provide that opportunity. We customarily provide 3 minutes for people to make those comments. If you do have interest in doing so, please make it known to staff. I forget, it's been a while. Do we have the mechanism in place to do that virtually?
Chairline, actually, virtual comments need to be submitted 2 hours in advance.
That's right.
So only people who show up in person can comment at this point, if they have not submitted a comment card.
Okay, well, if you're joining us virtually, there's notes for next time. We need those 2 hours in advance to make that accommodation, but here in person, we'd love to have you. All right, so by way of staff introductions, tonight we have with us our new director, Mr. Jeff Tamilevich, and we also welcome Mr. Ryan Levake. Nice to see you as well. We have with us Mr. Steve Abramson. We have Karen Stovall, our senior planner. We have Ms. Jennifer Daniels, and we also have Ms. Joanna Berry. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to move into our roll call. Let's do our virtual attendees first. Dr. Miller, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Hold on. Gotta get my camera going. But
why don't we give him a moment to work on that? And while he does so, Board Member Confer, would you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jack Confer, present.
Thank you. And let's come back to Board Member Miller while he works on his camera and do those present with me personally. To my left, would you be kind enough to introduce yourself?
Ricky Lynn Gans, present.
I am Chairman David Lyon. To my right, please.
Vice Chair James Frazee.
Richard Watson. Brett Siegel.
Okay, thank you for being here. Board Member Miller, are you all set? I see an image, but it is not moving very well. Okay, he appears to be having some technical problems, so by way of proxy, let me introduce to you Board Member Miller, and he'll be with us for at least a portion of the meeting. He has informed us that he has an appointment which he may need to run to. In the event that he does leave prior to the end of the meeting, we will still have sufficient members here for a quorum, so we will proceed that way. Now we have 2 short items and then our regular agenda for tonight. First, we have consideration of meeting minutes for July 28th, 2021, and we will follow that by consideration of meeting minutes for June 22nd, 2022. We have reviewed those meeting minutes and made a couple of minor corrections. Due to our attendance, we will need to do these votes on these for approval, do these separately. So let's first consider the July 28, 2021 meeting minutes. Can I hear a motion regarding their approval, please? Vice Chair Frazee.
I make a motion that we approve the study session and formal meeting minutes from July 28th, 2021.
Okay. Motion to approve from Vice Chair Frazee. Do I hear a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, and seconded by Board Member Siegel. Let's just, because we have virtual members, let's go down the line. Board Member Confer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Miller? I'm afraid we weren't able to hear your response, Board Member Miller. All right, this appears to be a persistent technical problem. Hopefully that will clear up. I believe we're going to get the votes to approve this anyway. So going down the line to my left, Board Member Gans.
Aye.
Okay. I believe you would want to abstain if you were not present.
Oh, then I will change my vote to abstain. Thank you.
Thank you. I vote aye. Board Member, Vice Chair Frazee.
I'm voting aye.
Okay. Board Member Watson
Abstain.
and Board Member Siegel.
Abstain.
Okay, so I believe we have 3 votes in the affirmative then. We have discussed this previously and decided that it may be difficult to get a full quorum on that meeting since it was a while ago and we have some turnover. So we're going to accept that and take those meeting minutes into the record. May I now hear a motion regarding the approval of meeting minutes from June 22nd, 2022? Board Member Watson.
I motion that we approve the meeting minutes from June 22nd, 2022.
Okay, and do I hear a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, motion to approve from Board Member Watson and seconded by Board Member Gans. Board Member Confer, how do you vote?
Aye. Thank you.
Board Member Miller, we give another shot. How do you vote?
I am going to abstain because I was not here.
Okay. Board Member Gans?
Aye.
I abstain. And Vice Chair Frazee?
Aye.
Board Member Watson?
Aye.
And Board Member Siegel?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. I believe that was 5 in favor and 2 abstaining. And I didn't announce the July 28th. We had 3 in favor, I believe. And we'll say it's 4 abstaining. We didn't get Dr. Miller's through. All right, so having taken care of that, we'll move on to our regular case. We have OMP Tempe Industrial Park. I believe that we have Ms. Riddell to present. If you'd be kind enough to grace us with your presentation.
Of course, thank you. Wendy Riddell with the law firm Barry Riddell, 6750 East Camelback. It's my pleasure to be here this evening on behalf of OMP Tempe Industrial Park. We are here this evening requesting a variance to increase the maximum building height to 55 feet for a Class A industrial. So the site itself may be familiar to you. Many of you may know it as Big Surf, if you've been around long enough. It's approximately 36 acres in size. It is zoned for industrial, the GID zoning district here in Tempe, for industrial development. We are requesting the development of 3 Class A industrial buildings. It is nearly 700,000 square feet of a new Class A industrial space. And we're hoping to develop that, proposed at 55 feet in height as measured for the Tempe zoning ordinance. Just to give you an idea of the type of project that we're hoping to bring, here you see some renderings looking west from McClintock Drive. You can see this is truly new Class A industrial. And of course, the corner of McClintock and Weber Drive, just to give you a little bit different perspective. So why 55 feet? And the answer to that is really to be able to develop Class A, new Class A industrial, particularly of this size and scale, it simply has to be 55 feet. The internal racking systems required today for modern industrial necessitate that you have that additional clearance so you can see really up to at least that 40, 42 feet. And then you've got on top of that the roof structure and parapet wall, which put us at that 55 feet necessary to achieve the clear height for modern industrial. We also find that there's other companies, particularly some advanced manufacturing type of companies that want to have a mezzanine system. And we do, in fact, have a potential user that's interested in this site, that is interested in the 3-tiered mezzanine. And so we really believe firmly and strongly that this is necessary for the site to develop as Class A industrial. So of course, we are in front of you today to argue a 4-part test that I know is very familiar to you already. So I just wanted to walk you through each of the components of that test. So the first component is that there are special circumstances or conditions applying to the property, including its size, shape, topography, location, and surroundings. Here, we have the largest assemblage of privately owned industrial land north of the Loop 202. It's also uniquely different that surrounding it, there's sort of the small-scale industrial, and we want the ability to develop large-scale Class A industrial, where you're looking at the smallest size building of being 190,000 square feet. The closest comparable project to this, within or property to this in the city of Tempe, is actually located about 14 miles away by car. It's at I-10 in Elliott. It is a project that was developed by Via West. Incidentally, it was also granted a variance to achieve additional height at 58 feet to develop this type of Class A industrial. And again, still talking about the special circumstance or conditions applying here, this site itself is located between a drainage channel and the Indian Reservation, and then both north and south of the site is also already zoned industrial. You've got a FedEx distribution center to the north, you've got industrial to the south, and of course the site itself is zoned industrial, so it really needs to be industrial. And then to achieve, again, that modern industrial, it needs to be that 42-foot clear height, resulting in a 55-foot building height. And then again, when you look at this in comparison to the surrounding properties, there's really a very visible difference based on the parcel size versus our neighboring parcels. Again, the largest sort of effective assemblage here you see requiring this type of size and this type of scale. And then looking at the second part of the test, that the strict application of the Zoning and Development Code will deprive such property of privileges enjoyed by other properties of the same classification and in the same zoning district. Well, again, I've already mentioned this is the largest functionally combined parcel, the GID, north of the Loop 202 freeway. And then interestingly enough, there are other properties in Tempe along the I-10 corridor that have the advantage of the Southwest Tempe Overlay District. So there is a district that has applied to those particular properties. You see that area highlighted there in gray, which allows for up to 60 feet in height. Unfortunately, we don't have that overlay here. So as a result, we're deprived of that same property right for similarly situated industrial property. So again, just to reiterate, that our site is deprived of this same development opportunity that all of the properties within that gray area in Tempe, within that overlay have. That is effectively provided to direct competitors in this Southwest Tempe overlay district. It's probably also worth noting, and I know several of you here are in the development business, so you probably know this very well already, but when you look at some of the surrounding cities, for example, in Phoenix, which really is the closest competitor to this site, you're allowed to go 56 feet by right and 80 feet with a use permit. In Scottsdale, you're allowed to go 52 feet by right. In Goodyear, you're allowed to go 50 feet by right. So these are our direct competitors, and we're really deprived of the ability to be able to compete with them, whether it's the Southwest overlay or with these other jurisdictions, by virtue of this regulation. So to draw that example out, again, our closest competitor is Park 52. It's Class A, brand new industrial park development that is underway. It's located in the city of Phoenix, right up the freeway, 5.3 miles, and it's taking full advantage of that 56 feet in the city of Phoenix. And then looking to subsection D of the test, that a variance may not be granted if the special circumstances applicable to the property are self-imposed by the property owner. Here, this property, this size, this scale, has been in the same configuration since 1969, as shown on this aerial that you see here in front of you. I would also point out that the standards in the GID zoning district, including this height, have not been modified since 1978. And I should also, just going back to that, I should also mention that the city of Tempe, and I'm certainly welcome to speak with Mr. Lebec about it, is in the process of updating, wants to process a text amendment to be able to increase the height in their zoning ordinance because they recognize that this is a problem and this is an issue and frankly is impeding development from being able to compete with some of the surrounding cities. And that is also why we are very pleased to have the support in front of you here tonight from economic development. They recognize that this particular project, bringing this nearly 700,000 square feet of new Class A development, new Class A industrial, will really bring jobs, brings vitality, and helps redevelop this otherwise underutilized site. So in conclusion, 55 feet in height is needed to operate a use that is permitted here in the GID zoning district. The building height in the GID district is lower than the clear heights needed for modern industrial operations. This request meets the four-part test I think we have clearly outlined. This request will bring jobs and economic activity to the city of Tempe in an area that has not seen reinvestment and allows Tempe to successfully compete with surrounding cities. We are also pleased to have a staff recommendation of approval. With that, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, very concise. Thank you. All right, board members, I know that some of you have questions.
Mr. Chair?
Board Member Gans?
Yes, I have a number of questions that I would like to ask. I have actually driven to the site and looked over the entire thing. As I looked at the plans and the number of loading docks, as well as the number of parking spaces required, it would seem these buildings are going to be of a similar size to UPS or a FedEx Center, possibly even bigger.
Mr. Chair, Board Member Gans, I think they would be slightly larger. I'm
Okay.
not immediately familiar with FedEx's exact square footage.
On just building one, I count approximately 46 loading docks between drawings A and B, another 54 on building 2, and another 50 on building 3. And as such, would it be unreasonable to assume we're providing employment for at least 200 people?
I think, Mr. Chair, Board Member Gans, I think in excess of that. We are likely to have even more depending on the ultimate user that goes in here.
Okay, because I noticed the plans call for a minimum of 229 parking spaces, and it says 694 if you include the ADA spaces and manufacturing.
Certainly, but I think you also have to take into account, again, depending on the ultimate user, who I don't have in front of you here tonight, but a lot of this type of use have shifts for employees.
Okay, my concern is, has there been any kind of a traffic study done to see how this is going to impact either McClintock Drive or Weber Drive?
I suspect the chair may be about to say exactly what I'm going to say, which is at the time of site plan, working through the site plan approval process, that is something that we will be, frankly, have already been working on with staff, but not as part of our variance approval here.
Ms. Riddell is correct. That will not be part of our considerations for the variance here. That will be part of another consideration in the future.
Okay,
They will at that time be required to provide adequate parking as well as to address any issues from traffic engineering.
Correct.
another question I have, if I may, if you don't mind. I'm concerned if you're going to have all of these people, when they get out for lunch, I'm a little concerned as to where they're going to go eat. You've got Moore at one end, and you've got University Drive at the other. Where are we going to feed all these people? It's not a food truck situation.
Mr. Chair and Mr. Board Member Gans, I can tell you we have had quite a few conversations with Mr. Singh, who owns a little property there, and I think that provides a great opportunity for lunch there. But otherwise, you're right, they'll be traveling to get lunch or packing it for themselves.
Yeah, because Singh Meadows is not open during most of the week.
You're correct.
Okay. I wrote down my questions, so that's why I'm just going down the list here. The city's quite a vibrant community, and I've watched it grow over the years. as a resident of 50 years in the city. And a concern that I have, these are huge buildings, no question about it, and they're going to be painted, as I read from the plans. My concern, though, is what are we doing about any landscaping for these buildings? I don't see it anywhere in what we've been given. And I'm hoping we're not just going to be looking at some blue blocks of concrete.
Board Member Gans, let me say that I am so very pleased and happy with your concerns for these design issues. Because that's, I think, in the end, a large part of what we're all involved in this process for. Most of these issues, however, really are handled by the Development Review Commission or by city staff reviews and planning. We recognize the importance of those, but we here tonight are really constrained only to consider the variance and its 4 criteria. If we tonight approve this variance and they move forward, they will certainly need to consider all the issues you bring up, and those will be reviewed in future steps, and we will hold them to those things. But here, I suggest we should really consider, is the request for a 55-foot height variance acceptable? And we really work on those 4 criteria, which Ms. Riddell, having done this many times, knows those are the steps we talk through. So with that in mind, do you have any questions that you feel relate to those issues?
I can't say that I do. I yield the floor.
Although, just to add, if I could, Mr. Chair, certainly the site will have to meet all of the underlying landscape requirements. So we haven't produced landscape plans for this hearing for the reasons the chairman has outlined, but I assure you the site will be landscaped.
Yeah. And I would suggest also, if you want to share your concerns with Ms. Riddell, she can pass them along. Certainly, however this is developed, they will want to have in mind the type of concerns that may come up, and I appreciate your taking time to outline those. Okay, do we have any other questions for our applicant tonight? Vice Chair Frazee, please.
Thank you. This question, just thinking about what had been there previously with the Big Surf operation, how tall was the tower that was removed compared to what's being proposed here? Is there anybody know that?
So, Chairman, Vice Chair, I don't know that I can tell you specifically, but I can tell you that if you look at the history in the staff report, there were multiple variances that were achieved to allow that additional height. What that height was ultimately built to be, I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
But it was pretty tall.
That's what I was wondering,
Yeah.
compared to what's being requested here.
You know, my memory is taller than what we're requesting, but I don't want you to commit that on the record.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for our applicant? Seeing none, we will thank you, Ms. Riddell.
Thank you.
Oh, all right, Board Member Siegel.
Thank you. Ms. Riddell, can you, I guess, provide some more support with respect to the criteria, prong number 3? How does this not constitute, I guess, a special privilege inconsistent with the other industrial properties in that area versus something that's 14 miles away?
I'd be happy to. So thank you, Chairman, Board Member Siegel. The reality is all the other surrounding industrial properties are much smaller in size and scale. So there is not a single property there that could ever even accommodate the size of the buildings we're proposing here. So when you look at the comparison between the size and scale of those little properties on up, I mean, you'll see that we're very different, unique.
Thank you.
Okay, any others? Seeing none in person or virtually, we'll thank you, Ms. Riddell.
Thank you.
So we'll now move on to our staff presentation. Ms. Stovall, if you are ready.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and board members. My name is Karen Stovall, Senior Planner. This variance request is for the property at 1480 North McClintock Drive, which is the northwest corner of McClintock and Weber. The zoning of the site and the surrounding properties are GID. There is vacant land on the east side of McClintock that is owned by the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community. The applicant wishes to develop 3 new single-story buildings on 3 separate lots. And at this time, the applicant has completed several preliminary site plan reviews with staff and will need to have a development plan review approved by the DRC for site design and building elevations, and also approval of a preliminary and final subdivision plat by the DRC and City Council. Per the zoning ordinance, building height is measured from grade, which is defined as the top of curb as established at the midpoint of the front property line. In this case, because they'll be subdividing into 3 lots, the front property line of each of the new proposed lots to the highest point of the structure. And for these proposed buildings, that's going to be where the parapet walls are, and those are used to screen the rooftop mechanical equipment. The variance request is to increase the building height from 35 feet to 55 feet. And due to minor differences in the grade and finished floors of the 3 lots, the buildings would actually be, building number 1 would be 53 feet 8 inches, and the other 2, they're showing at 55. As mentioned in the applicant's letter of explanation, the maximum heights for industrial districts are not consistent with modern design standards, and staff is aware of this issue, and the department intends to request that council initiate a text amendment to increase the maximum heights, possibly up to 65 feet, but we have not yet begun that process. I'm going to now review the approval criteria for a variance. So the large size of the project, which is just under 36 acres, is unique in that it allows development of large industrial buildings, which really don't exist elsewhere in the vicinity, as most buildings in the area are decades old. The current limitation of 35 feet would not permit construction of modern buildings. So while warehousing and manufacturing are permitted uses in the GID district, a developer can't build for those uses today under the current standards. The strict application of the code would permit a building height of only 35 feet, which is consistent with the older industrial building designs. Because the site is not located in a zoning overlay, and because the ordinance has not been updated to reflect modern design standards, the owner is deprived of privileges enjoyed by other properties in the same industrial classification. The variance request would not grant special privileges inconsistent with the limitation of properties in the same vicinity and zone as the subject site. Other GID zone properties in the city are permitted higher building heights due to their location within an overlay. Authorization of this variance would allow a height that's consistent with those other industrial properties. The site's location and changes to design standards were not self-imposed. Additionally, the maximum building height for GID was last modified, as the applicant stated, in 1978, and the code has not been updated to reflect those design standards, which have changed significantly over the years. A neighborhood meeting was not required. Planning received 2 phone calls. The first caller just wanted more information about the project, and the second actually stated that he would like the city to encourage higher buildings along McClintock, but he did not have any specific concerns about this proposal. Based on the information submitted by the applicant, we are recommending approval of the variance, subject to the one stipulation in the staff report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Board members, any questions for Ms. Stovall?
Mr. Chairman, this is Jack Confer.
Yes, Board Member Confer.
Thank you. We had a similar matter that came before us at our last meeting, and I just, there was some documentation that was in the applicant's presentation. There was a memo from City of Tempe, but I could not read it all from being online. And there's been some discussion about changing current code to allow building up to 55 or 65 feet. I was curious from staff, if there's a timeline on that?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Levesque to answer that question.
Hi there, Ryan Levesque, Deputy Director of Community Development. Currently, right now, we're processing a handful of code text amendments. Actually, just went to the DRC last night, but it does not include the text amendment regarding the height. So we're completing that process step, which will conclude with City Council in September. And then we'll wrap up what we're calling our third phase of code text amendments, which will include the height for industrial zoning district up to 65 feet. That process will probably likely not be completed until early 2023.
Thank you very much. And then back to the staff report. I still, and I mentioned this last meeting, the last criteria about the self-imposed criteria. I still have a hard, I understand staff is sending these requests for variances this way, but I still have a hard time with that because the choice to build this building there is self-imposed. And we have these requirements, these restrictions at 35 feet right now. So I have a hard time overcoming that sometimes. And I think we're setting a dangerous precedence until the rules are changed. So project looks good. I think it'll be good for the community. But the letter of the law, so to speak, and I'm not an attorney, is that it can't be self-imposed. And I have a hard time getting over that sometimes. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and we will certainly discuss such comments when we get to our board member discussion. Do we have any more questions for Ms. Stovall? Vice Chair Frazee, please.
Yes, there was a comment, I believe, in the applicant's narrative in regards to how the actual elevation is measured. And it sounded like they were somewhat of at a disadvantage with the way that Tempe measures the height elevation. Is that something that's also going to be looked at in this ordinance change?
No, I do not believe, sorry, Chair and Board Member, I do not believe we plan on changing the definition of grade and building height. It would simply be to increase the maximum permitted height.
Okay, thank you. Any last questions? All right, seeing none, we'll thank you, Ms. Stovall. Okay, so now we come back to our applicant. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. I've missed a step. Public comment. Is there anyone with us here that wishes to make comment not directly associated with the project? Meaning that you are not directly associated with the project. Okay, seeing none. Ms. Riddell, if you would come back, you may address what you have heard.
Yes, thank you. In particular to Board Member Confer, I used to sit on the Maricopa County Board of Adjustment, so I will tell you I very much get what you're saying about the not self-imposed. I guess what I would encourage you to think about here is the property is zoned GID. The property is zoned for industrial. And in the market today, to build industrial, it has to have this additional height. So it isn't a situation where we can say, well, we can just build lower buildings. That's nothing in the market would support that on a site of this size and scale. So I realize it's a nuanced argument, but I hope that at least makes some sense in terms of that final condition. So I would just respectfully suggest to you that we do indeed meet the test here. I think it's a great project for Tempe, and I hope we can achieve your support.
Okay, so last chance at it now. Do we have any questions for our applicant? Looks like we are satisfied. Thank you, Ms. Riddell.
Thank you.
All right, so board, now we come to the time when we have our discussion amongst ourselves. You are free to make comment and describe your support or lack of support, your concerns. We can debate and discuss a little bit, but once we have some kind of feeling that we've said the main points, I'd like to move to a motion. So let's just open it up now. Board members, what are your thoughts?
Mr. Chair,
Board Member Miller, please.
I I'm in favor of this. I looked at it, and having been familiar with the site for a long time, since we've all lived in Tempe for a long time, um, this is a very good use of a site that is sorely in need of a good use. And I also, so I'm going to support it. Also, in addition, a comment about Mr. Confer's comments about the letter of the law. He is correct with respect to what the heights say now, but the height, this is in a sense similar to arguments about what a strict constructionist might say. When you write something in 1978 for 1978, it works perfectly. Trying to apply 1978 to 45 years later maybe doesn't work quite so well. And so, looking at it from uh, another perspective, I'm looking forward to seeing these changes come through on DRC as well. So I'm going to be supporting those when they get there as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, other comments? I'd like to hear a couple more. Board Member Watson?
Yeah, question. We approved a building height adjustment, I believe it was last year. Does anybody recall what that height was? I think the petitioner said 58 feet. I don't recall.
I believe that was the property that was referenced, the VOS down the 14 mile away.
Okay. Now, the way I recall that project, it was a very similar situation, except that they had a grade issue involved, that their site sloped up, and so measuring from the curb, they were minus 6 feet to start with at the front door. Just the same, I'll add in my 2 cents since I'm already talking. I think the 55 feet they're asking for is very reasonable. In my opinion, well, let me back up a step. Board Member Confer, I really enjoy and appreciate your keen observation there. I think there's a deep philosophical conversation we could have about agency and what things are of our making. For purposes of this variance, I think that I would use a definition of did the applicant do something that changed the site that caused the hardship? Being that we're talking about a site which the city of Tempe has said, we expect this to be industrial, I think they're showing up and saying we're trying to fulfill that, but there's a kink in the works. I would say I would describe the unique condition a little differently. I would say it was left behind by time. And our intent clearly is to develop this as an industrial property, and we just haven't caught our standards up to allow them to do that in a way which is modern and efficient and makes sense. So for what it's worth, I will be supporting the variance. Any other comments, questions? Vice Chair Frazee.
Thank you. I'm also in support, and for the same reasons Member Miller had commented on. It's a good use for the property. When I look at to the north with the Federal Express building, then I believe even farther north on the east side of McClintock, similar type situation, large distribution facility. You know, this is obviously higher than what's existing around there, but I think it's definitely in line with what's being built in this industrial environment.
All right. Any other comments? If not, how about we have a motion? Board Member Watson.
I motion that we approve the request for variance to allow the height to be 55 feet.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion to approve as written by Board Member Watson and seconded by Board Member Siegel. We'll go down the line again and ask for your votes. Board Member Miller, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Okay, Board Member Confer.
I vote aye.
Board Member Gans.
I vote aye.
The microphone didn't work for some reason. Let's try.
Doesn't want to turn.
There's some sort of problem with her microphone here, but Board Member Gans has voted aye. I vote aye as well. Vice Chair Frazee?
I vote aye.
Board Member Watson?
I vote aye.
Board Member Siegel?
I vote aye.
Okay, well, that makes the math really easy to do. That gives us 7 votes to 0 in favor of approval. So with that, you've got your variance, and we thank you.
Very much. We appreciate it.
Yeah, well spoken as always, Ms. Riddell. All right, so do we have any staff announcements that we wish to discuss?
Thank you, Chair Lyon. The only announcement that we would have is the potential for a Board of Adjustment meeting on Wednesday, September 28th. We are looking at a variance for setbacks in a single-family residence. That would be 2 months from tomorrow. They are having their neighborhood meeting on the 15th of August. We have no cases lined up, no applications in for the August meeting, so
Okay,
you're free at the end of August, but potentially not September. Thank you.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Abramson. So it sounds like we will see you in 2 months and not sooner, hopefully in 2 months. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. Thank you.